Hi, um, my name is Carol Miller. I'm a member of the DayTimers committee. I'd like to welcome you all here, wherever you are, and I'm happy to introduce our speaker for today. Dr. Edith Eger is a sought-after clinical psychologist, lecturer, author, and Holocaust survivor. Using her past as a powerful analogy, she inspires people to reach their potential and shape their destinies. Hers is a message of healing and personal growth. As a teenager growing up in Hungary in the 1940s, she was a serious student of the ballet and a gymnast training for the Olympics. As a Jew living in Nazi-occupied Eastern Europe, she and her family were sent to Auschwitz. Her parents died there. She and her sisters survived despite the horrible treatment they endured. After the war, Edith moved to Czechoslovakia, where she met her future husband. In 1949, they moved to the United States. In 1969, she received her degree in psychology from the University of Texas, El Paso. She then pursued her doctoral internship at the Army Medical Center at Fort Biles, Texas. She has spent much of her professional time working with members of the military with PTSD. She continues to use her personal experience to inspire, educate, and help others while currently seeing all patients in her practice in La Jolla. Dr. Eger is an author and member of several professional associations. She has appeared on many television programs, including Oprah Winfrey and Larry King Now, and is frequently invited to speak throughout the United States and internationally. She was the primary subject of a Holocaust documentary on Dutch national television. In the fall of 2017, at the young age of 90, her memoir, The Choice, Embrace the Possible, was published. The book focuses on moving forward in light of hardship and has been translated into 9 languages. Been on the New York Times bestseller list as well as other countries. The book has won both the 2017 National Jewish Book Award and 2018 Christopher Award. I have read it and highly recommend it. She is currently working on or has published her second book called The Gift. Dr. Eger probably doesn't remember this, but I first met her 6 or 7 years ago when we were in the same jazzercise class. Both of us in the back row. Later, I heard her speak. She was charismatic, inspiring, and a little dynamo. I will now let her tell her story in her own words. Dr. Edith Eger.
Just before I pass it over, I'm so pleased to announce we will have time for Q&A at the end of the session. We will be utilizing the Zoom chat function. So any questions, please feel free to drop into the chat and we'll be able to field those at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Hello, hello. I'm so happy to be among such beautiful, wonderful, wise women of strength. You're not strong, remember, you are a woman of strength. But we learned as Jewish people that we're very proud of our ancestors because they didn't have it as good as we do, and yet they never gave up. So I'm hoping to really empower you today and see how you can acknowledge that one person can make a difference, and you're showing up, and I'm hoping to be useful to you. I never ask people, how can I help you? Because, you know, I'm not Humpty Dumpty, and I'm not gonna put you back together again. I am hoping to be, hopefully at this point, a wise woman of strength. And I am never going to give up, and I'm never going to retire. I don't care about the chronological age. It's going to happen anyway. You know, we're talking about how we respond to any situation. Especially now, it's a very difficult time because none of us know what's going to happen tomorrow. And this is what happened in Auschwitz as well. When I took a shower, I didn't know whether gas or water is going to come out. And I know that the way you get up in the morning and the way you talk to yourself can change your whole body chemistry. And this is really hopefully going to be a good beginning for us to dialogue, because children don't do what we say, they do what they see. So I hope to be a good role model to the young people and do everything in my power to see to it that they never, ever, ever experience what I did. So I am a mother of 3, a grandmother of 5, and a great-grandmother of 6 boys. And I think that's a wonderful revenge to Hitler. I am hoping that we can have a dialogue. I can see your faces, and so please ask me any questions. I'm so happy to know that being proud as a Jew is giving me always some way of thinking that there is a gift in everything, and it's not what happens, is the way we view it. I was given a book, Man's Search for Meaning, when I was at the University of Texas, and I don't know if any of you have read Man's Search for Meaning, but I wanted to write 10 pages for everyone, because I finally found someone who gave me the verbal capacity to let something out of me, because I went underneath when I came to America in 1949. I didn't speak a word of English, and I didn't have $6 to get off the boat. I was lecturing in Miami to the Jewish community, and I told them then when I fled the communists in 1949, I was able to go to the Rothschild Hospital that was supported by the American Jews. So I want to thank you that you gave me a home and you fed me and clothes for my little girl who was about to be a 1.5 years old. And I'm full of gratitude to the Jewish community that you're just not thinking of yourself, that you're totally committing yourself to others as well. So I am coming to you as a woman who lives in the present and thinks young. Not young and foolish, but young to be childlike, but not to be childish. And so I think there is a difference. I think Jewish people know how to talk to themselves. You see, in the ghetto, I began to study Sholem Aleichem, and he was so brilliant. One of the things he said, why is the ocean water salty? And the answer is because of all the herrings in it. And so the Jewish people knew and know how to really laugh at themselves, which I think is a good way to be a healthy adult. Jewish people know very well how to laugh at themselves. And I have yet to arrive. I'm still in the process of becoming, and I'm so happy that my daughter tells me that I am full of Edith-isms. So I'm going to give you a couple of those. The opposite of depression is expression, because what comes out of your body doesn't make you ill. So if you have any secret, I hope you can share it. And also, are you revolving or are you evolving? Because I like the idea of the metamorphosis, the butterfly, but you have to let go of something, and you can't let go of anything unless you replace it with something else. So I am referred to many times as a spiritual midlife, because there is our genes that I cannot change. There is the environment, I'm taking the third the way I respond to the other two. So I hope you can think about your thinking. And before you say anything, you may ask yourself, is it really very important for me to say that? And most of all, is it kind? And I'm practicing that very much, especially with my children and grandchildren. And I have now 2 beautiful great-grandsons. They were born 2 months ago, and I am showing to you Noah and Dylan. Isn't that wonderful? So that is true, you know, that I was in Hungary, and my native tongue is Hungarian. But I also remember that my parents had 2 beautiful daughters, Magda, who is still alive and well, and Clara, who was a child prodigy in violin. She was the only Jewish girl accepted at the music conservatory in Budapest, and my parents really wanted to have a son, and guess what happened? They got me. So I don't know if you were supposed to be a boy or you were supposed to be a girl. I don't know, but all I know that I became cross-eyed, and my sisters carried me and took me for a walk, and they blindfolded me so nobody would see how ugly I am. And my mother also said to me, I'm so glad you have brains because you have no looks. So I don't know if you carry with you certain messages that you've been labeled at home. So the question I ask, actually 2 questions. One is, when did your childhood end? Because as I work with my patients, many of the survivors' children became parentized. My little girl learned how to speak English. She showed me a book called Chicken Little, Goosey Lucy, Turkey Lurkey, and I didn't know turkey from lurkey and ducky from lucky. But she was in a daycare center and came home one day and said, you have to buy a turkey because Thanksgiving is coming up. Obviously, I knew nothing about Thanksgiving, and I knew that something is going to happen here because I cannot afford a turkey. So I was working in Baltimore doing piecework, and there was a grocery store called Schreiber's. And I went to Schreiber's. I saw the turkeys and the ducks, and finally I found the smallest little chicken. Okay, it took me about an hour and a half on the bus to go where I lived. So I did get my choreography. I came in, I did the high kick, and I said, guess what? We're gonna have a baby turkey. And I think, you know, she never knew that we were poor. And I think it is so important is how we can provide the environment for everyone, that people can feel any feelings. There is no right feeling or wrong feeling. There is only my feeling. In America, many times people mix up thoughts with feelings. You may tell me, I feel I have to go downtown, I have to do this and that, buy something for chicken soup. But that's not a feeling, that's a thought. And feelings is about healing. So the work I do is grief work, not what happened, but what didn't happen. Because when my first granddaughter was born, Lindsay, the pediatrician examined her and said, this little girl is very flexible. She might become a ballerina. And I said to myself, now I can die because my blood is in her. And sure enough, she did become a beautiful little ballerina. But when she was in her high school, at Bishop's in La Jolla. She asked me to buy her a dress so she could go to her dance. And I am a big sucker. I bought her a beautiful Laura Ashley original. And I went home, and out of the blue, I started to cry. I didn't understand. The word understand to me is very academic. Anyway, I didn't understand why am I crying, and I came to the realization that I'm not crying because I bought Lindsay a dress so she can go to her dance. I cried because I never went to a dance. So this is the work I do today. I take your precious hand, and I realize that people don't come to me, they're sent to me. And you know what? The most obnoxious person is your best teacher. And I'm happy to tell you about the white supremacy boy who was sent to me as well. And you cannot heal what you don't feel. So my work is about grief, not what happened, but what didn't happen. And you can become the best mommy to you, and I hope you are. So the first question I ask, when did your childhood end? And the second question, would you like to be married to you? Think about it. Would you like to go home and tell your husband, I like to have a love affair and I want to have it with you? He may drop dead. He may think you want something. And sometimes we don't realize that the best thing for the children is to have a happy marriage. And you may have some unfinished emotional business, and starts with revisiting the places where you've been, and then relive that experience as if it would happen now. So you're going through the valley of the shadow of death, but you don't get stuck in there. Because when you're stuck, you're constipated. And when you're constipated, you have to concentrate on a movement. So I like the idea of a journey from victimization to empowerment, from darkness to light. And that's why I am here talking to you, hopefully letting you know that you might be pregnant. You may want to go back to school, because when I was 40, my supervisor told me that you got to go get a doctorate. And I said, it's impossible. By the time I get a doctorate, I'll be in my 50s. And he said, you'll be 50 anyway. So I did go back to school, and thank God, I'm Dr. Edith Eger. And that's exactly what happened when my mother told me in the cattle car. And that's what I say when I go to the school to the young people. And the young people are the future. They are the ambassadors. So I go to school, every school I'm ever asked for, I show up. Again, I am very importantly tell you that our children need very good role models. And I'm hoping that you're a good mommy to you, because self-love is self-care. It's not narcissistic. Narcissistic people don't like themselves. So in the cattle car, my mom said, we don't know where we're going. We don't know what's going to happen. Just remember, no one can take away from you what you put in your own mind. So I beg young people not to interfere with the natural growth of your brain. Don't smoke pot. Your brain is not developed until you're 25. So I'm kind of preachy sometimes to young people, but the best power is brain power. And I keep telling them to see a movie called The Karate Kid. So the best power is brain power. So there we go. And I'm writing in my book that I met my husband. He was a partisan. And what we did, and I cannot speak for anyone else, but I know that many of us were very hungry. I was very hungry. I was very lonely. And I met this man. People ask me, did you love your husband? I have a definition of love, the ability to let go. So I married someone when I was hungry, when I was lonely. And the second time, I didn't go back to my husband. There is no going back. That was a new beginning of a woman to a man, because I was either his mother or his child, and vice versa. So today I work with couples. I like to work actually with 3 families and see what we can learn from each other. Because a child of a survivor many times have difficulties with loyalty. One of my patients told me that he went to school and his friend had white Wonder bread with a mayonnaise and bologna on it. And he had a Kaiser roll with a brisket and some strudel, and he wanted to have the white bread. So there is some loyalty. And the parents said, you know, those people. And I don't know if any of you are a child of the survivors, and that you had to really sometimes see in what way you can many times develop your true self, your genuine self, that many times we give up to fit into the family dynamics. Like if you are a firstborn and you marry a firstborn, you may have a power struggle because you're going to have 2 bosses. So you have to give up the need to be right. See, I'm right, of course, I'm right for me, but I cannot be right for my sister. But I asked her to come back with me to Auschwitz, and she told me I'm an idiot, I'm a masochist. And we went through the same experience. What happened, I was working with 2 paraplegics, and I began to really, I was one of those people that studied the whole PTSD movement, but it's not the post-traumatic stress disorder. We mustn't, diagnose people and throw a label on them. It's a post-traumatic stress reaction to a loss. It's all about grief. So I had these 2 paraplegics coming from Vietnam, and one of them kind of in a fetal position. Why me? Why me? And cursing God, country. Conversely, the other one said to me, you know, Doc, I'm wearing a white coat. While he is talking to me and says, you know, I'm in a wheelchair and God gave me a second chance, and I can see my children's eyes much closer, and I see the flowers. And I'm sitting there with a sign, Dr. Eger, Department of Psychiatry, and I feel like a biggest imposter. Because when I came to America, I just wanted to be like you. I wanted to be Yankee Doodle Dandy. I wanted to speak English without an accent. I spent 3 years at the university trying to get rid of my accent. You can see how far I have gotten with that one. And so I think it's very important, hopefully, for me to know, with all my survivor's guilt, that maybe God had a hand in it, how I was able to create a way to be in Auschwitz. Because if you study stress studies by Hans Allier, who actually got the Nobel Prize, and says anything that's stressful coming to us, we have 2 automatic responses: we either fight or flee. So I couldn't fight. I was actually attacked by one of the members of an audience. Why didn't I fight more? Why we just went to the gas chamber? Even though I told him by that time it was late because if I touched, and many people did touch the guard, and they were shot right in front of me. We couldn't fight or we couldn't flee, because if I touched the barbed wires, I would have been electrocuted. And yes, I saw the blue bodies. So I'm telling you today that we had to somehow design a family of inmates so we can go beyond the me, and commit ourselves to each other, because all we had was each other then, and all we have is each other now. And now, the freedom of choice. When we were completely naked and completely shaved, my sister Magda looked at me and said, "How do I look?" And I had a choice then, as you have a choice now, whether you are reacting or responding. If I would have reacted, I would have said something very different than what I actually said, because I realized that I became Magda's mirror. So I told her not what she lost, but what she still had with her. And she still tells me she remembers that I told her, "Magda, you have beautiful eyes. You have such beautiful eyes, and I didn't see it when you had your hair all over the place." So no one grows on criticism. And so I ask people to get rid of yes, but. Yes, you're a pretty girl, but you're fat, but you're pimply, and give me the but and I give you an and. The other things I like people to get rid of, one is guilt. Because guilt is in the past, what I could have done. You know, my parents had tickets to come to America and then didn't use it. You get into the could have, and and all you have to say is, if I knew then what I know now, I certainly would have done things very, very differently. And get rid of worry, because worry is in the future, and we mothers worry a lot. And we get into the what if this happens, what that happened, don't go there, don't do this, you're going to fall down, you're going to break your neck. You know, it's just very important to think about your thinking and pay attention what you're paying attention to. Any behavior you pay attention to, you reinforce the very behavior what you really want extinguished. So what you think, you create. It's called negative self-fulfilling prophecy. Any comments, any questions so far?
There are some. We're going to try something new here. We're going to have a look at the chat. Eileen, do you want to look at the chat or give?
We don't have a lot of questions just yet, but I think we can remind people now, if you have the raise hand function or the chat function, to drop anything in. While people are coming up with some questions, I know I had talked to a couple people, and I was actually texting a friend while you were talking, and I had a question of, what was the greatest advice that you were ever given?
I think the greatest advice that was given by my mother, because that's exactly what happened. Everything was taken away from me, and nothing came from the outside. When I stood in line, and Dr. Mengele pointed my mother to go to the left, and my sister and I to the right, I followed my mother, and still remember that eye contact. He grabbed me and he said, "You're going to see your mother very soon. She's just going to take a shower," and promptly threw me on the other side. And at the other side, I met another inmate who took my earrings and pulled it out and told me while she was suffering, she was there from 1942, I was part of the final solution of Eichmann, when 15 highly educated people celebrated at the end of the day that they created the final solution that they can put 30,000 Jews in the oven in one day. So when people try to compare the genocide, my answer to that is, unfortunately, genocide is still here as we speak, but never in the history of mankind such a scientific and systematic annihilation of people existed. So I say that wherever I go, especially in churches. And so I can tell you that that evening, Dr. Mengele came in and wanted to be entertained, and my friends just threw me in front of him, and I was dancing for Dr. Mengele. But I remember that I closed my eyes and I pretended that the music was Tchaikovsky, and I was dancing the Romeo and Juliet at the Budapest Opera House. Today, when I work with a woman and she tells me I was sexually abused, but I cannot really tell you because you were in Auschwitz. And I tell her, you see, you may have been in a kind of a prison that was the most difficult one because you didn't know the enemy. I did. So there is no comparison who is suffering more or who is suffering less, but suffering is feeling, and when you suffer, you become stronger inside. I look at life from inside out. I don't wait for someone to make me happy. I think being happy to me is such a general word. I don't know what to do with it. But I'm cheerful. I do the best I can with every day, because perhaps the whole life is just one day. The morning sunshine doesn't come back. So I'm grateful and appreciate every moment in life. I love to eat, as you know, and now people bring me food, and I love the food I get. I love the chicken soup. I love the matzo ball. I love the food, and someone says, I'm not coming in, I'm leaving food on your patio.
Food is such a universal love language, and I love that you mentioned soup, because that reminds me just
never
of
throw out
warmth.
anything.
There's
If
a
you take
few
me-
more questions.
Yeah.
No, there's I'll do them one at a time so I don't stack too many together. One of them says here that how can we teach future generations about genocide without inducing fear into the youth of today?
Yeah, that's a very beautiful question. You cannot teach anything to anyone unless they have the desire to learn. So sometimes parents overdo that Holocaust. I know I had two rabbis' children, and they didn't want to be Jews anymore. I think it's very, very important that you make anything that you say, first of all, age appropriate. I mean, I don't tell an 8-year-old the same thing as I say to an 18-year-old. So I think it's very important for us to maybe be Jewish and answer a question with a question. Because I know that one boy asked the father, where do babies come from? And the parents got together and they were telling that boy all about what happens. And the boy said, you know, Johnny came from New York. I want to know where do I come from? So sometimes it's good to repeat the question of what is really that is going on here. I think the children are curious. I was very curious. I always wanted to know what's going to happen next. So curiosity is very, very good. But it's good to be Jewish and answer a question with a question.
Wonderful. Looking here, Diane asks, I feel like there is a lack of conversation on what happened right after the war was over. What was that like for you?
Well, I tell you what is not. We didn't know anything PTSD. We wanted to be normal. And we got married very quickly. And we got pregnant very quickly, because that means to be normal. No, there was nothing. First of all, we were so hungry. And we were with my sister, who was hidden by her Christian professor in Budapest. And she was playing violin at the radio station. So when she was out, the two of us had to go to bed because we only had one pair of shoes for the three of us. So we had to learn right away how to cooperate and not compete or dominate, just like in Auschwitz. So when I danced for Dr. Mengele and I finished, he gave me a piece of bread, and instead of gobbling it up, I was on the third floor on the top. I shared my bread. And you see it in my book that when I was on the death march from Mauthausen to Gunskirchen, my friends carried me so I wouldn't die, the ones that I shared the bread with. I think it's very, very important for you to think about where you are, what is your head telling you, what is your heart telling you, and never forget what happened. I don't overcome. I came to terms with it. I call it my cherished wound. And what I say is what I lived. And I am hopefully a very highly sophisticated Dr. Edith Eger as well. So it's very good to have the IQ and the EQ. So when my granddaughter Lindsay was in a class for children whose IQ was over 140, I went to visit Grandma's day was, and the teacher called her my little red caboose. And Lindsay was a perfectionist. It's one thing I like you to give up, perfectionism. And yes, she was erasing everything 10 million times. And she thought she does not qualify to be in that class. And she was about 10 years old. And this is where I came in and told her the first time, and I don't know what words I used about Auschwitz, that a teacher has no right to define who she is. And anyway, she did go back to school. And when it was time to apply for colleges, get what was the title of her autobiography, When the Caboose Became an Engine. And she graduated with honors at Princeton, got a PhD at UCLA, and she's a professor of psychology right now at the university here in California. So I think it's very, very important for me to tell you that when my little girl was 2 years old, I put money away, so someday I'm gonna send her to Harvard. And so I think we Jewish people go to the library, not to the bar. And I am pretty preachy when it comes to alcohol, and marriage is not a good mix.
Valerie wanted to clarify that advice your mother gave you, and we wanted to make sure we heard it correctly. No one can take away from you what you put in your own mind. Is that correct? Yeah?
Yes.
And what's some of the worst advice you've ever been given? Or what is some advice that if we were given, you would tell us, don't listen to that?
Yeah, I am going to say that I like to know where you're coming from, and not to deny someone else's truth. But remember, there is no truth. It's all subjective. It's my truth and their truth. So if somebody tells me that I'm a stupid idiot, I'm going to say thank you for your opinion. And this is what I teach the children, not to react, but to respond, because it's still America, hopefully, that people have free speech. But the longer they talk, the more relaxed you become, that you do not allow anybody to get to you. They would throw me in a gas chamber any minute. They would beat me, torture me. But what I bring you is my spirit that I could never touch. I created my own world and felt sorry for the guards that they were brainwashed and they wearing a uniform and they throwing children into the ovens. And I think my God has guided me to change hatred to pity. But never forget, no, never forget. I'm reminded almost every day wherever I go. I know I had steak a while ago and I was walking on cobblestones and I was remembered when children were spitting at us and calling us Schweinehund, dogs. And so I felt so sorry for the little children that they were brainwashed to hate me. And guess what happened? When I did my doctoral work, I took care of the German military families, and a little girl comes to my office, jumps in my lap and calls me Oma. So somehow, maybe if you sit it out, maybe somehow we'll find a way to empower each other with our differences. So you can be you and I can be I. You know, I was liberated by the GIs and I love the big band. I love the boogie woogie, and you like your rocking and rolling, but that doesn't mean that mine is better than your music. We can empower each other, but I love the big band, and I love to do the boogie woogie, and I hopefully that you can also learn that too.
Wonderful. That is so cool. Just even comparing music and knowing that everything is special to someone. Another question here: why are some people more resilient than others under hardship conditions?
I think the children who are not spoiled, the parents are doing a favor to them, because in Auschwitz the spoiled children were waiting for someone to come. And that's a very good definition of a victim, that they're waiting for somebody outside of them to come and rescue them and take care of them, that there was no one. The children who had a harder childhood made better survivors. I was very much alone as a child. I was painfully shy. And I had a ballet master who told me that God made me in such a way that all my ecstasy comes from inside out. But I had no idea what he was talking about. And in Auschwitz, it came to me that this is temporary and I can survive it. Even though I was told every day that the only way I will survive is I'm never going to survive, and the only way I will get out of here is as a corpse. I heard it every day, and my blood was drawn at least twice a week. And when I asked him, why are you taking my blood? And he said, to aid the German soldiers so can win the war and take over the whole world, especially America. And I said to myself, you stupid idiot, with my blood, you're never gonna win the war. So, you know, there was humor. We had a lot of humor going on between us. We were fighting about cooking, how much paprika, how much garlic, how much chocolate, 7-layer chocolate cake. We were constantly eating. When I was in America and I had the fortunate to meet, oh my God.
Julia Child? No.
The one who wrote the hierarchy of needs.
Maslow.
Abraham Maslow. Yes, and that this was so true, that when you're hungry, all you talk about is food. And once your belly is full, you talk about safety needs. And once you have safety needs and your belly is full, you talk about sharing it with someone, the love needs. And then talks about self-esteem and self-actualization. The self-actualized person is a citizen of the whole world, rather than saying, I am a Texan, so what? You know, I'm no more and no less than a human being. And as such, I am limited. I am not limitless. I'm limited. I do the high kick that kind of halfway now, and people love it, even though it's not really the high kick I used to do. But I do the best with what I have now, because I can only touch you now.
I think we have time for a few more questions. One of them that just came in says, this is from Lisa. My husband was the child of Holocaust survivors, and other survivor children relate to him about their upbringings. Our children sometimes had difficulty with his overachieving desire. Do you see a difference in how survivor children raise their kid versus non-survivors?
This is the question when it comes in, when did your childhood end? And the Holocaust survivors did not know. I'm going to speak for myself. My little girl came home and she cried and told me that she was not invited to a birthday party. I didn't know anything about empathy. I didn't know how to validate a feeling. I just minimized it. Those are the defense mechanisms that we use. We minimized it. I said, oh, that's not such a big deal, honey. And I took her to the kitchen and I gave her a chocolate milkshake and a piece of chocolate cake. Food. Everything was, because I was not prepared to really know how to keep somebody's feelings company. Never try to reach out to a person who is depressed and cheer them up. Because if I tell you that my pinky hurts and you tell me that's not so bad because I just saw a man who doesn't have an arm, that's not going to help that person. Now they're going to feel guilty that they shouldn't feel the way they feel, so they end up feeling worse instead of better. So, you can just say, tell me more, because love is time. But don't ask questions and don't give advice. I used to be a professor of psychology, and one of my students said that in America, people are hearing but not listening. I said, well, let's try it out tomorrow morning when you pick up your books. When someone says hi, and you say very quietly, my mother died this morning. And sure enough, the other guy said, oh, wonderful, I see you later, bye. See, people are hearing but not listening. And that's why it's very, very important to repeat what you're hearing. And I try people to really, especially couples, how to really, at the end of the day, not ask, how are you? How was your day? Are you hungry? No questions, because sometimes a question or a request can come across as interrogation. How are you? Well, how do you think I am? You got to be very careful to really rehearse and say. So for instance, I took care of physicians' wives, and the physician said, I'll be home at 6. And 6 o'clock comes and goes, no sight of the husband. She's getting angry because she just made a beautiful dinner. So I asked her to get down on her knees, take a pillow, and beat the pillow. Get it out. And once you're done with that, you say to yourself, I can use this time for me. I can give myself a double bubble bath. I can give myself a manicure. And by the time he boogies in, maybe 9 o'clock, you say, geez, good to see you. I missed you. Rather than you. When you say you're going to dump on somebody. I think, I would like, I'm willing, and that's what I feel. It's a kind of a acceptance of reality, not to be an idealist, but to be a realist. And Auschwitz was certainly an opportunity to discover the inner strength that no Nazi could ever change the way I was thinking. So that's what I bring you. Self-dialogue, pay attention what you're paying attention to, but don't try to fight the past or run from it as I did. Face it. I am much freer now than I was 50 years ago. So I was taken out of.
Can you expand on the dangers of perfectionism? You want to
Yes.
talk about that?
When you're a perfectionist, you want to do everything just right. You know, it takes courage to make a B or a C, and you want to do everything just right. You know, my mother baked a beautiful challah on Friday, and I can see her doing, you know, it's almost like a choreography, an artwork, the way she was making that challah. And so to give up perfectionism, because if you are a perfectionist, you want to do everything right, which means never. And you know what? Perfectionism leads to procrastination. So you want to be sure that when you procrastinate, you know, I am thinking of Gone with the Wind, the classic historical woman. She, you know, the Yankees are coming and God knows what happened in terror. And she said, I'll think about it tomorrow. That's what happens. And then when you procrastinate, the world can pass you by. It's very important for you to get rid of the need for approval of everyone. That doesn't happen. But just because people don't like what you're saying, I remember I gave a talk at the university and a guy walked out and I said to myself, I'm no good. My accent is bad. I was already on the guillotine. You know what? The guy came back. He just had to go to the bathroom. A couple of years later, I was at the military hospital and I was studying human sexuality. And I was with 4 very knowledgeable psychiatrists. And I had to give a talk on the psychology of the rapist. Rape has nothing to do with sex. It has to do with, unfortunately, being debased into an object. That's what rape is. It has nothing to do with sex. So anyway, God planted the same scene, like 900 people in the audience. A guy gets up, walks out, and I say to myself, too bad he's leaving, I'm good. Huh? Same situation, 2 entirely different responses. So love yourself, please. There'll never be another you. That I guarantee you. Now, yesterday I gave a talk and they wanted me to ask them a question. And my question was, how do you want to be remembered? Would like any of you tell me?
If anyone would like to share, I can unmute you. If anyone wants to do the raise hand, or you feel free to type in the chat if you don't feel comfortable sharing on camera. So the question again is, how would you like to be remembered? I would like to be remembered as kind.
Beautiful. Me too. I like to be remembered kind as well. I also like to be remembered that I do everything in my power to see to it that the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren will never ever experience what I did.
Robert.
Hello, we got a man.
Yes, the question is how I like to be remembered as a good, decent human being who is kind to everybody and gets good out into the world.
Yeah, thank you. You're a mensch.
Thank you.
You're a mensch. That's a good compliment.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
There is the difference between a man, a mensch, and just, being a male. It's okay. But, a man is a protector of the family. A man is a teacher to the children. The way he is providing the love to the children's mother. So love is not what you feel, is what you do. That you commit yourself to the children's mother, because children don't do what we say. They do what they
Would anyone else like to share? I see a lot coming in the chat. Actually, I'll read through a few of those so everyone can see them in case you're on a phone. People would like to be remembered as loving, selfless, making an impact, of influencing healthy minds to thrive, wanting to be remembered as kind, loving spirit, humanitarian, someone who brings people together. Janet says she'd like to be remembered as loving and giving wife, mother, daughter, and community member. Sandy says she would like to be remembered as someone who knew how to love. Wow. This is a really special way to end this session. I feel very excited to read these words and see how committed everyone is to kindness and loyalty and love and strength. This is wonderful.
And being a humanitarian, I got a request from...
I'm not sure which request you're speaking about.
The man who made my book #1, the summer reading.
Oh, Bill Gates.
Bill Gates is recommending my book as #1 for summer reading, and he is a humanitarian, and the daughter would like to have my book as well, and so I am about to send 2 books to Bill Gates and his daughter, and so I feel that you never really stop. And once we are in our deathbed, that we feel satisfied and not asking about what I didn't get or should have gotten, that you're celebrating not what you have given me, but in what way I was able to be useful to you, that you could now take a look at your life. Where are you now? Because there are no problems, there are only challenges, there are no crises, there are only transitions. And if you are in a midlife transition, you want to know where you want to spend your time between now and whenever you will be 92, as I am now. So I want to really thank you and your wonderful congregation to make it stronger, that you show up for the congregation, because that's what you do, and there'll never ever be another you, not in a million years. So I came to celebrate your precious, one-of-a-kind, diamond, proud Jewish women.